Hello and welcome to a little tutorial that I wanted to put together to talk to you about a really great what if analysis tool called Scenario Manager. So Scenario Manager is a type of predicting modeling tool that's built into the forecast features in Excel. It's not as popular or as advertised as it probably should be for a lot of reasons. So I wanted to take some time to give you a little business case scenario about purchasing a car or financing something and how we can utilize what if analysis, specifically Scenario Manager, as a tool to help us make the best data-driven decision. So let's take a look. So here we have in our worksheet, which is available for you on Canvas if you like. Okay. We have a worksheet that talks about what it would take for us to purchase, say, a $50,000 vehicle, which is crazy as it sounds in the year 2024. That's about what a car or a midsize SUV is going to go for. So there's a couple things that you're going to do when you go out and purchase a car. One, you got to pay tax, right? The government's always going to get their cut. Historically, when you take out a loan, when you purchase something that is being financed, historically, you are asked for a down payment. The down payment does a lot of things. It reduces your monthly payment, and it also gives you a little skin in the game. So when I say that, what does that mean? Well, what it means is if I put down 10% in a car, I'm more prone to at least try to honor my commitment in paying that back because I've already put some money down up front. So some of this is mine versus if I took out a car loan with zero down at zero interest. There's nothing that says that I don't run that car into the ground and just default and I'm off to the road. But that's another conversation for another day. Either way, we're going to put some amount of money down up front. Think of it like an initial investment that's coming from you. That money is not going to be interest or taxed interest, charged interest. It is going to be taxed, but it's not going to be charged interest. And all of that just goes to reducing the principal amount of the loan. When you go through and purchase anything, a house, a car, whatever it may be that's being paid back or amortized over time, you're going to have a term of payment. In this case, it's 72 months. And the interest rates you're paying, because money is not free, right? So if you borrow money in order to buy something, you're going to pay some type of interest back. Why is that? Well, banks give loans to make money, and this 3.25% is their return on investment, right? So if you borrow $50,000 from a bank or $45,000 from a bank, then they're saying, well, hey, if you do that, we're going to charge you 3.25% on that money, and that is the money that they make back for giving the loan. They're not doing it to be altruistic. You are an investment that they are making. Okay. So that's our input section within this spreadsheet that we're putting together. Here's our output section. In our output section, we've calculated with the basic formula what the exact percentage or the exact dollar amount of the down payment would be. Okay. The purchase price less the down payment, $45,000. That's the amount that you're financing. That's the amount that you are going to pay 3.25% monthly on. Okay. Taxes are going to go on to the total purchase price, right? We know that's 7%. Taxes are here. And ultimately, once that's all said and done, you are going to make a monthly estimated payment of $688.76. Now, I have another video that happened earlier in the course that talks to you about the payment function and how that works. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to take the time to explain how this function works. However, you can go all the way back to chapter 2 in your book or roll back in Canvas and you can see all the videos and talk about TVM, which is time value of money, and how principal and interest and things like mortgage and car payments work. What I want to talk to you about is another tool called Scenario Manager. So devil's advocate, what if? So what if, or we'll call it angel's advocate, what if we got really lucky and we come across a little bit of extra cash, and instead of being able to put down, say, 10%, right? So instead of putting down 10% towards our car, we're going to put down, say, 15% towards our car, right? So remember, 15%. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay up front some of that $50,000, specifically 15% of it. If we do that, you'll see that now, because I put down 15%, which is $7,500, my monthly payment is $650.50. Ha, interesting. So now what if, for example, we see that Ford Motor Company or Toyota or someone that has their own financing arm decides to offer you special financing, which happens all the time. And instead of having that market rate of 3.25% interest, which might be a little low, I think right now in the market, it's more like 4. Okay. You're able to get a special deal and you have a special introductory interest rate that is 1.99%. Hey, look at what that did. So now your payments are down from $688 a month to $626.71 a month. So the question you'd ask yourself is, well, what if the down payment changes and what if the interest rate changes? And what you're seeing is, hey, if those two things change at the exact same time, that's how your bottom line is going to be impacted. Okay. What you could do if you use a worksheet like the way this one is designed, where all of these are kind of inputting into the outputs at the bottom, you could manually go in and you could change these variables and see how they change. And that's fine, but it's not always time efficient. Okay. That's where the scenario manager tool comes in. What the scenario manager tool lets you do is create somewhat of a predictive data model. You can take your scenarios, right? And I've got some spelled out for us, right? Our current scenario, in the perfect world, our best case scenario, and if things take a turn, our worst case scenario. We can feed these alternative inputs into Excel. And when we do that, it will tell us what the bottom line is, right? And it'll show it to us all at once. So we can look at the current best case and worst case possible scenarios to make the best data-driven decision for us, or at least be prepared for whatever's going to happen. Okay, be prepared for whatever's going to happen. Sorry, I bumped the microphone. I got so excited. I was talking with my hands, even though you can't see me. Okay, so I want to walk you through what that works is. So here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to hit our data tab. And you'll see we have a group of tools in Excel called Forecast. Okay, in that group of tools called Forecast, we have a what if analysis section and we have Scenario Manager. But before we do that, I want to show you something. So if I go down to this yellow cell, which is my bottom line, that's my monthly payment, and I go to formulas and I run an audit, you'll see that there's a relationship that's happening here. Okay, that's what this audit trail is showing you. So it's saying that this, and this are lending their values in order to create a formula or function that calculates this bottom line. So the arrow is the bottom line, right? The arrow right here, that is the dependent cell. It is dependent on these independent variables. So the amount financed, not the amount financed, the years financed or the months financed, the interest rate, okay? Those are all things that are independent variables that are lending their value to calculate the payment. If you are going to use any kind of modeling tool, so not just Scenario Manager, but Goal Seek, Solver, even data tables in Excel, you have to have some kind of formula or function that shows the relationship between the independent and dependent variables in order to make that work. Now, if that didn't make sense to you, I've also got videos on that too. So go back to Goal Seek in our playlist and maybe start there, and you'll see me talk about formula auditing, independent and dependent values. For now, I just want to show you what this particular what if analysis tool will do. So in order to do that, this formula set has to already be set up. When in doubt, run an audit. You can do trace dependence and it'll show you that, right? Okay, so one quick note about that. When formula auditing is on, you can't do anything. So we're going to click remove arrows, and now we're going to jump in and do our scenario manager. So I'm going to click data. I'm going to go to what if analysis and select scenario manager. Okay. So think of this like a lump of clay. We haven't done anything. Nothing has been set up yet. So there's nothing we can do with it. What we have to do is start from scratch and put the scenarios that I spelled out for you into this tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click add. Okay. And I got to give this scenario a name. So I'll just call this current scenario. Easy enough. Okay. The next thing I need to do is I need to tell it what the changing variable cells are. So what independent cells are we going to change to figure out or to try to predict what's going to happen? And in this particular case, it's going to be down payment. I'm going to hold the control key down on my PC. Keyword was control key on PC. Okay. And then I'm going to click APR. So I'm going to get a non-continuous selection of down payment and APR, right? So that's cell C5 and C7. Okay. So when I click OK, it's going to say, all right, well, if this changes, what will it change to? So in this particular case, it's the current scenario. So we're going to say 10% interest, 10% down, and we're going to say 3.25% interest. Now we're not done, right? Because that's just what our current scenario, that's our starting point is. So if nothing happens, this is what we will do. This is what the next 72 payments will look like. Okay. But in this particular case, because we're trying to build something predictive, right? So if we have a windfall, if the best case scenario hits, what does that mean? Okay. Well, in that particular case, what we're going to do, we're going to click add. And now we're going to add the best case scenario like so. And it still remembers that we want to use C5 and C7 as our changing independent variable cells. So in this particular case, what are we going to do? We're going to click OK. And it happened to already be there because I plugged it in before. But if it wasn't already there, you would simply type in these numbers, 0.15 for 15% down and 0.0199 for 1.99% interest. Okay, so that's our second scenario. One more scenario and we're out of here. Okay, now this is the one we don't like. So we'll say worst case scenario. Okay, so let's talk about it. So say something weird happens, heaven forbid, you have some kind of accident, something unexpected that requires cash, and you're not able to put down 15% or 10%, and you're only able to put down 5%. We can budget that in and figure out what that would do to your bottom line. Oh, we can't reference it. Okay, that can happen. All right. So then let's say that for some reason the market takes a crazy turn, which happened, say, for example, during COVID, interest rates went way up towards the end of COVID. Well, in that particular case, instead of 0.0199%, 1.99% interest, you're going to now get 7.25% interest, which is pretty darn bad. Like so. Okay. So I'm going to click OK. And when I do that, now inside my scenario manager window, I've got current, best, and worst case scenario. So here's the first thing we can do that's pretty darn cool. So I can click worst case, for example, and I can click show. And when I do that, it automatically told me what was going to happen. So if the worst case scenario happens, the doomsday scenario, if it happens, I'm going to be paying $815.54 a month for 72 payments. If the opposite happens and we get our best case scenario, if I click show, like so, I'm only paying $626.71 a month for 72 payments. That's almost a $200 swing, right? That's a big swing. And if our predicted scenario happens to come true, I'm paying $688.76 a month. So that's kind of a crux. That's like the summary of what Scenario Manager does. It lets you sort of plan, okay, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? What do we think is going to happen? And you can sort of look at it from different perspectives, almost like a pivot table, and decide, hey, like, all right, if the best case scenario happens, what's that mean? If the worst case scenario happens, is that something we're still going to be willing to accept that risk? That's kind of the benefit of what Scenario Manager does. Now, it's not as popular as some of the other tools like GoalSeek, but if you take the time to build this into Excel, it can be very, very, very beneficial. Additionally, it has the ability to create a report. Okay, so it can output this. So if I click summary and it says, hey, what do you want to summarize? We'll say we want to summarize our monthly payment. It'll actually automatically create what is called a scenario summary report. That's what just happened there. So now scenario summary reports, they kind of have a lot of junk in them. And as you read through the book, it'll tell you the best way to format this. I can just kind of give you a once over, right? We're going to want to delete all this extra space because we just don't need it. And all this junk at the bottom, kind of don't need that either. And what I would suggest you do, although everyone can do it differently, is I would go in and change these cell references, which they're not cell references. It's just text that's in a cell, and actually spell out what it is. So that's down payment. And we'll resize this cell. And this is APR. And that is monthly payment. And there you have it. And I'll just resize this a little bit. So there you have it, short and sweet, Scenario Manager. There's one other thing I wanted to show you. So say you happen to make a mistake when you're creating your scenarios in Scenario Manager. You can go back into this tool, go to Scenario Manager, and you have the ability to edit any of the scenarios. Boom, just like so. So I can go in and I can edit these, change them out as I see fit. Now note that when you do that, it's not going to redo the scenario summary report. This is static text. So it's not going to update the existing scenario summary report. What you would need to do is delete it and run it again. Okay. So that is it. Short and sweet, Scenario Manager. Take a little bit of time and challenge yourself to go through and create your own Scenario Manager model and scenario summary report. If you have any questions, give us a shout. Love to hear from you. Have a good day.